Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture in this benighted age, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes or by plugging our RSS feed into your favorite podcatcher. You can find the RSS feed on our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/vm. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at vmspod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on Spotify, YouTube, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell a friend, give it a mention on your favorite social media platforms, and go to the iTunes store, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. Might just inspire Apple to promote us a little. You can support the Virtual Memories Show and get access to exclusive content with a recurring monthly donation via Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/vmspod and set up your level of support. You'll get new material from our patron-only blog, and you'll also get to listen to my quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet, which features extra material from our guests and is only available to supporters of the show. And the new episode just went live. So visit patreon.com/vmspod or paypal.me/vmspod and help me continue to produce smart conversation about books, art, comics, and culture every week at the Virtual Memories Show. Before we get into the update in the episode, here's a reminder. I will be interviewing the cartoonist Seth at the Strand Bookstore in New York City on May 7th at 7 p.m. in support of his new collection, Clyde Fans, from Drawn and Quarterly. Visit the Strand site, strandbooks.com, and look up the events calendar to find us. You'll need tickets if you plan to attend. And that's May 7th, 2019, for you time travelers in the audience. And no major travel last week, except for a relatively uneventful FDA trip down to Maryland, and nowhere to go this week, which is nice. But I have a trade show in Chicago next week, and I'm hoping to get a podcast or two in during that pretty quick trip. The one thing is, I haven't booked my flight yet, and they're starting to get kind of pricey this close to departure. So I'm sort of considering taking the Lakeshore Limited 20-hour train ride from New York to Chicago for the trip out there and then fly back. I've done a lot of train travel lately, or in the last couple of years, but it's only been 2-3 hour jaunts. But being in one with a roomette could be kind of interesting and neat scenery going through from New York to Chicago, blah, blah, blah. If it happens, I'll definitely post lots of pictures. I doubt I will be recording a conversation with anybody on the train, but who knows? But for now, let's get to the show. My guest this week is Frederick Totten. Now, I'd seen Frederick's name in my pre-podcast years because he wrote a book called Tintin or Tintin in the New World, which tied into my comics and postmodern literary fixation back in the 90s. But it was only when I was prepping for my episode with Jerome Charin late last year that I came across Frederick as a potential guest. The two of them were contemporaries in the Bronx, Frederick and Jerome, and they've stayed pals since those days, which is like the 1940s and 50s. And doing my prep, I saw that Frederick interviewed Jerome and thought, I should look that guy up. And after that episode, I noticed that Frederick had a memoir coming out this spring. So I asked Jerome's partner, Lenore, if she could introduce us, which brings us here. Frederick Totten has had an amazing career, writing, teaching, working in the art world, and he has this new memoir out, My Young Life, which came out in March 2019 from Simon & Schuster, covering the years from his childhood in poverty in the Bronx up until just before everything starts to come together in terms of that career. Now, I adored My Young Life. It just knocked me the hell out. Frederick's a great storyteller to begin with, but I'm also a sucker for the material. Again, it's starting with a kid, broken home, trying to escape from poverty in the Bronx, armed with this notion that he should be an artist in Paris, and then kind of shifting as he discovers literature and a whole cohort of like-minded friends and teachers. My Young Life recounts all sorts of misadventures and the education that brings Frederick out of this naive youth and into the New York and the America and the world of the 50s and 60s. He gets mentored by an artist who was a convicted murderer. He travels to Mexico, takes up with a high-class call girl, meets Hemingway, gets his heart broken again and again, ends up in some weird relationships. And it all kind of leads along this process of becoming this renowned writer, teacher, and art critic. My Young Life is wonderful. It evokes this whole lost world of kind of dubious characters and where you could plausibly have the romantic dream of being an artist in Paris and having these artistic visions. And at the same time, the book brings in the shadow of time and mortality. It brings the reader into these sort of side stories of what becomes of some of the people in Frederick's life after those days in his youth. We talk about that during the conversation. You'll get a better idea what we're about. So I was really looking forward to sitting down with Frederick once I read My Young Life. And as I think you'll be able to tell, we hit it off. We've been in touch since finishing up. He's waiting for our follow-up conversation, which I'll mention in a minute. He's connected me with a bunch of people who would also make for good guests. But I really recommend My Young Life. It's a book about someone who got out and lived. And you'll see the same lust for life in that book is present in the person you're about to hear in his early to mid-80s. As far as caveats go, not a ton. It was East Village, so standard car, police noise. The biggest caveat is one I'm somewhat embarrassed about, but it's time-based. We never managed to talk about Frederick's art writing or the art he's making now, because he's taken up making art in his later days. I promise we will record a follow-up episode all about that part of his career. Now, we did go on after we finished up to visit a gallery that was showing his work, but it was the last day of that show, so there's no point in telling you the location, etc. Before that, in between the podcast and the gallery, we had brunch at Café Mogador, which is Frederick's favorite haunt. I only tell you this because there was this huge line of people outside, and he walked in and they found a table for him and his goofy hanger-on immediately. People kept coming up to say hello to him while we were there. And it was just kind of neat, given that My Young Life is all about cafe culture, starting with the cafeterias in college where he's hanging out with his friends all the time and never getting any work done. Seeing how that has carried through for him for 60, 70 plus years is, it's just kind of amazing. Anyway, here's Frederick's bio from the flap copy for My Young Life. There's a more extensive bio on his website, fredericktotten.com, and I'll put that in the show notes for this episode. Frederick Totten is the author of 5 novels and My Young Life, a memoir. His short stories, art, and film criticism have appeared in such places as Art Forum, The New York Times, Vogue, Granta, and Harper's. Totten is the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship for Fiction and the Award for Distinguished Writing from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with Frederick Totten. But then there's the reading. I actually do try to.
You have to, yeah.
I like to. All I've done for you is My Young Life and Green Hour, which is the most atypical of your novels.
Most atypical. Yeah.
Which I realized only afterwards. I started 1010 and I'm like, that's okay. No, I've read the one novel of his that doesn't fit the rest of them, but that's okay. I've got the memoir down.
The normal book, so to speak. But,
there's still aspects of it that are a little strange.
Well, I'm laughing because what I thought was a kind of, I hate to use the word, but conventional structure, conventional book. I mean, it's so disarming in a way. It's so disappointing, actually, is what I'm trying to say. To realize how how the culture has gotten to such a level of ordinariness. Yeah. What's expected is the ordinary. The exceptional is aberrant and shunned, and in a certain sense, feared in a way. I'm happy to say this again. It's on record. I have the evidence for it. Years and years ago, I was on the committee, one of the last 3 judges to be on the committee for the Pulitzer Prize. And maybe get hundreds of books, like that, boxes of books. In the beginning, you read everyone to the cover, from cover to cover, and later on, you start to get wiser about it. And I came across this book. I thought it was so strange. I'd heard about the writer. I didn't know him. Gilbert Sorrentino. The book was called
Mulligan Stew?
No, it was called Gold Fools. Not Fool's Gold, but Gold Fools. Published by an unknown publisher, Green Integer Press. And when you look at it, Green Integer Press is L.A. Stockholm. That's
the 2 dates.
Right. It's weird Green Integer Press. And I started to read it, and I thought, this is a terrible gimmick, because every sentence starts with an interrogation. The whole book, 400 pages, practically, interrogation. I said, oh God, just one of those postmodernist gimmicks, So I started, and I keep reading and reading, and then I find myself completely caught up in it, enamored, and admiring it immensely. So I say to the committee to the chair of the committee, I want to propose this as a candidate for the Pulitzer. And I have this in writing. I have the emails. She said, "Oh, we can't do that. It's not a novel." I said, "But of course it's a novel. Why is it not a novel? There are characters. In fact, it's very plotted because he took it from a 1926 kids book, and he followed it chapter by chapter, except turns it around, just thumbs up, turns it on its head. So it's a novel." And then she wrote back and she said, "Well, if we had a special category for originality, we might consider it." Needless to say, after I put that in print, I was never invited to be a judge at the Pulitzer again, or probably ever get the Pulitzer again, or as if I'm ever get one. Yeah. But that was interesting, that notion. And she had been a professor at a very distinguished Ivy League university, and director of the creative writing program. And I remember that answer, because I thought, this is what's expected most of the time. The well-made novel, following some prescription that was never invented by God, following a certain kind of circumspect rules of arc of the narrative, well-rounded characters, character development, all the stuff, which in a way is proper in a certain sense. But you will never have a great literature come from that. You'll never have a Moby Dick if that was the answer. Moby Dick would be just punished. Imagine Moby Dick coming to a workshop.
Well, in its time.
Yeah.
Nobody got it.
Yeah, nobody got it. Right. It was a failed book, and he's a failure. And, but you imagine even if Moby Dick is crazy, do you think that Marty, which I try to read all the time, it's beyond words. But the idea that it even got published is extraordinary to me. Well, I guess he was well known for
you get reputation. Keep going.
He had a sort of reputation that he sold some books, and maybe they carry him in a little bit. But I feel I don't know how we got on this issue about
the idea of not canonicity, but the idea of originality and greatness.
Originality in literature, yeah. So I mean, I feel Melville has it. I can't remember the quote. I certainly wish I could, but the basic gist of it is that he preferred to read a book, a novel, especially a novel, that it may fail, but you could feel its reach, you could feel its ambition, you could feel its drive to something wonderful, rather than a well-made conventional book. He actually puts it almost in those terms, but not quite.
I was trying to explain to a group of Japanese businessmen yesterday, which already had a language barrier going on, the joy I get out of it's a nonfiction book, but actually has some Moby Dick-like qualities to it, The Peregrine by J.A. Baker, which, as I describe it now, I will fail just as I did yesterday. It's essentially one season of a man in Eastern England watching peregrine falcons, just observing them. But the language in it is astonishingly beautiful. The guy who's writing it, and it's a nonfiction piece, so it is Baker himself, tells you almost nothing about himself except his absolute goddamned alienation from humanity. He is so clearly wishing he was part of this natural world and not
So
around man. But
I have to remember this book.
I'll send you a copy. Trust me, it's one that I like to bring books for guests, but I'm always afraid with real writers.
I'd love to know about this. I mean, the problem is when normally your information about things that are interesting to you come from good friends you trust, recommendations for books, or sometimes from students because they're sort of engaged in a way that you won't be and your generation is not.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot from that. That's why I love teaching. I still love teaching very much. I don't know what happened. I was talking about the Green Hour.
Yeah.
The Green Hour. So the Green Hour, which I thought was kind of straightforward in a way, I had lots of resistance to that book. I mean,
in terms
on
of
levels that I can't even understand. I mean, because I never had what they call notes before.
Yeah.
I guess I was spoiled. I did my first novel, The Adventures of Mao. It went the way I wanted it. And then Tadien, A Brief Romance, the editor was impeccable. He just said to me one moment, he just asked me, he had one query in the whole book. I said he put on his stockings and he wrote down, perhaps the word hose would be better. And I thought, that's really good. I like that word, hose. That's what a good editor does. A good editor prods you toward finding a way that you would like to find yourself if you know how to do it. Mm-hmm. I thought that was great. And I said, but then I had notes for the Green Hour, which were, why is the character doing this, and how do we do all that stuff? Which is, if it's useful, I'm very glad to use it. But if it's merely to iron out the book so it fills a certain kind of conventional order or pattern, I don't think it's useful. I think it's destructive.
Yeah. That everything is explained and explainable.
Yeah. Because you want to be sure that the reader's not going to feel miffed that you haven't explained everything, and so that they're going to feel inferior to the text, and then angry with the text, angry with the writer, and angry with the publisher. I mean, you know what I mean.
But that's the challenge. Yeah. That's what we should be looking for.
But you know something, Gil? This is the thing. Please let me go on about this.
Oh,
for a moment.
please.
I remember when I was a kid at City College. I'm still a kid at City College. The notion was that there was a literature that was difficult. I can't say recondite, but challenging. It could be poetry that was that way, or novels that were that way, Joyce especially. But that's what you were in for. You were in for the challenge. You weren't in it to find a simplistic fiction, didactic fiction. I mean, this is really true. I remember the arguments we would have about the virtue of Joyce against Proust. I mean, undergraduate school, and the Proustians would like it for what reasons they like it. Great books, of course, but the Joyceans, including myself, liked Joyce because he was difficult. I mean, we wanted to get our teeth into it, so to speak. So I guess that's So what you did read was probably the most conventional, so to speak, novel, but
I have a memoir too, so that gave me the background of who you are. I will say. I guess a couple of weeks ago on the show, I had the explaining Anthony Pohl's Dance to the Music of Time to a guest who he made the easy assumption that it was Proust for British people. I'm like, I know you're going to think that, but trust me, it is completely different. And let me explain over the 3,000 pages of this book why that is. He's a guy who writes in like collage style with these incredibly short blurbs. And I said, I know you're probably not going to have the focus to do 3,000 pages of reading, but trust me, it has a giant payoff for you. But again, we find our weird joys. To me, I only read Proust in my mid-30s and felt that was appropriate, that I don't know if I would have gotten.
Yeah. Well, you're a kid. It's hard. Yeah. I mean,
I had the same thing with The Leopard, one of my favorite novels, the Lampedusa book, that I read at 40. Yeah. And I thought if I read that book 10 years earlier when I first bought it, I don't think I would have understood the loss that Lampedusa is conveying, not just with the feudal system, but just a man in middle age knowing where everything is going. Yeah. There are things we have to age into, which I'll ask you about near the end.
No, but what you're saying is so true, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think, in my time, I don't know what they're doing anymore, but in my time, in like junior high school, I think, you were made to read The Scarlet Letter or Miller and the Floss, and I thought, that's not ready. We're not ready for that.
Yeah, the Scarlet Letter, I think, is still a high school staple, and I think we still don't.
Yeah,
I mean, what has a kid at that age?
What has a kid got to understand about that Orthonian world in any regard? The language, everything. Or for example, I remember having to read Romeo and Juliet, and thinking it's absurd. I mean, it's not for. They thought because we were teenagers, we sort of liked the idea that there's a teenage couple, or, we identify with that kind of idea. But it's so absurd. No, you have to. Every moment in your life changes in every regard. Our tastes change, and so I think you have to move into the world according to where you are at the time in that moment. So Proust is something. Especially for an American, Proust, I think, yes, you have to be you have to be in the world a little bit. Yeah. You have to be in the world a little bit.
Yeah. You have to have some experience.
Some experience.
I'm going to ask memoir questions, but before I forget this one, what books do you return to nowadays? Who do you reread most?
Off my own books?
Yeah. Oh, besides, of course. Naturally, lying in bed reading your own.
Of course, I have them all around me. Yeah. And there aren't that many, so I don't have to worry about them overweighting the bed. But, well, that's the same as asking me what are the books that matter to me most of my life. And,
but some of them only touch you once, and you don't return to them.
Some of them are stupid books that touch you.
Yeah.
For example, when I was a kid, I wrote about it in a memoir. I read The Fountainhead. I must have been 17 or 18.
Yeah, the perfect age. I remember noting.
And you're a kid. And then suddenly you get your head filled with ideas that maybe you're one of the also extraordinary ones. You're like Howard Rourke, and you don't have to dabble in the mere day-by-day things that other people deal with. You're too above it. You're sort of above good law courts, and you're above everything. And at the end of the book, he sort of rises above all the dilly-dally of modern life. So that's the kind of book you feel. And yes, there's the bourgeois world and the Philistine world, but you're not part of that Philistine. You're a remarkable fellow and all that stuff. So it incites whatever may be in you, a kind of stupid egomania, But that's a very influential book, however, to many people. Whether it's a good book or not doesn't matter. I mean, the thing is, it persuades. That's what it does. I mean, it persuades you to a certain view. It persuades you to the idea of them and us, or them and I. But the book I've gone back to all my life and will probably take with me. I plan to take a lot of books with me to my grave, unless I'm cremated. Yeah. I don't want my books cremated. No. But if short of cremation, I have an idea of filling my casket with a couple of books, because just you never like the Egyptians with tools for the other planet.
Or cargo cult, same thing. Yeah, right. You want
tools,
to bring
tools for the other world to bring with, in case I don't have a good library where I'm going to be. Yeah. You never know. So I want to be sure. So I would take the Magic Mountain, Thomas Mann, above all.
Which
because I think it's everything I felt. It's everything. It's the perfect Bildungsroman. It's a perfect novel of education. It is the novel of education. It's a novel from innocence to awareness, from innocence to experience, from innocence to passion. It's all there, and it's done with the most wonderful, ironic way. It's the irony I find so satisfying, and the passion that comes through it. That's the most satisfying. The idea of but full frontal passion gets boring. It enervates itself. But passion with irony doesn't. Mm-hmm. That's what he has. And I adore him for that. And I revere that book. I love that Hans Castorp is an innocent and foolish, and we love him and sympathize with him, but also feel a little sorry for him because he's such a nitwit in some way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Can't you want to say to him, can't you see what she's doing to you, you fool? But the intellectual atmosphere of the book, where would you find it today? Where would you find it today? Where would you find it today? Not one drop anywhere in the ocean of literature do I imagine that happening today. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong. You read everything, so maybe you know much. I'm sure you know better. I don't read that many.
I only read for guests, and most of my guests are you and Jerome and Edmund White.
I don't want to call it a philosophical novel, but that means that it's didactic and people sprout ideas.
Yeah, that it's meant to be a persuasive or polemic.
Yeah. That's what I don't mean that, but I mean somewhere where ideas are generated through the book.
Well, it's the encyclopedic novel. This is what I studied at Hampshire, although in my half-assed way, because I was 19, 20 years old. It was things like Ulysses, Gravity's Rainbow, etc. Right. The books that contain a world within them. Yeah.
The doorstopper books.
Yeah, basically my idea was to read books that I knew nobody else was reading because they were bigger and tougher. And that was, how I sort of differentiated myself at the time. Now I have this, but it was my notion that I was going to hit people with these giant books. So.
Yeah. But to go back to your question, the other books, which I'm reading for purposes I'll explain to you some other time, maybe, who've stayed with me.
I do have a feeling we're going to have more than one conversation, by the way. Not that I want to presume, again, as I mentioned before we started recording. But,
you may notice I don't mind talking about myself.
Yeah, I found that.
It doesn't deter me in any way. But this Mexican novel, Pedro Páramo, if you know that one, Pedro Páramo, by Juan Rulfo, R-U-L-F-O. I have it here, so I'll show it to you later. It's a slender book. I don't know, maybe 175 pages, maybe less. So amazing, what a stupid word to use. So, astonishingly beautiful, because it astonishes you. It's as fresh as 2 hours ago, made from God. A Mexican novelist who wrote one novel, Pedro Páramo, and a handful of short stories that are very good. Garcia Marquez, the greatest of all the neo-contemporary South American, Latin American writers, said, we, meaning the magic realist novelists, all those, a generation that came out of the big explosion, the boom of Latin and South America, we would not have existed if it were not for Juan Rulfo. One book. He changed the whole thing. As I say, he changed he changed the landscape. It's elegiac, it's surrealistic, it's touching, it's what you really find in it, the majesty of it for me is he can do in 5 or 6 words what other people need about 5 pages. He gets it right. He gets it right. The color of a sky and why that color is important in the narrative, not just the description. The voice, you hear it, it stays with you, it stays with you, it stays with you. The voices. And he does, again, the kind of thing that I find so interesting and so wonderful and so not done today. He goes from first to third person. Sometimes we don't know who the characters are who are speaking. He doesn't identify them. But, since I'm waxing so lyrical about all this stuff, I have no desire to die. We all have a death wish, perhaps. I'm sure I have a couple of death wishes, maybe for others, but I feel sadness at the idea of leaving this planet. I feel great sadness, and because I enjoy it so much, and I want to know more. Mm-hmm. But I must say, however pretentious it may sound or be, at least I could say I had a glimpse of something beautiful in this world before I went out. And I would never have had it if I hadn't been born, and part of that is reading. And most part of that now, for me, is Shakespeare. Yeah. I mean, he's unimaginable to me. When I was a kid in the Bronx, again, we go back to Romeo and Juliet, made us read Romeo and Juliet. That soured me. Yeah. It soured me. I mean, this is not for me. Who is this for? What are they talking about? So they actually turned, where they should have inspired you, they turned you off, I think. Maybe not everyone, but certainly I felt that way. And now I think, how could, if nothing else in the world was there for me but Shakespeare, that would have been worth the trip. I still can't get over him. I still can't get over, and again, going back to Thomas Mann, the profound wisdom and irony and Olympian view without being polemical, just lay it all out and see what's going on here in this world. What is it? What are these voices? What are they saying? What do they do? I find it, I read, going back to reading again, I read Hamlet every so often. Yeah. And I find, for example, one day I was on a bus going to Long Island, reading a little, I think it was I forget which edition it was, the Yale University Press edition, I forget, Kittredge edition. And I started to laugh on the bus. And I thought, I never thought that Hamlet was funny, but it's very funny. Mm. I mean, apart from the obvious thing, what are you reading, my lord, words, but it's funny. When he lugs the body, he gets polluted, he lugs him. I mean, just things like that. Yeah, so I feel Pedro Páramo was one of those books. Under the Volcano is one of those books. I mean, I forgot, I didn't say about it. It just slipped out of me. Under the Volcano. I didn't even
Lowry?
Malcolm Lowry novel. Malcolm Lowry novel. A novel that was, if you look at the letters from rejection letters he received from publishers and editors, they would say it's a pretentious book, and it's this. He had a hard time publishing it. Same with Nightwood, with Juno Barnes. No one wanted it except T.S. Eliot was able to publish it.
Right.
No one wanted the book. It's interesting to me. That doesn't always mean because a book has been rejected, it's good.
It's good, yeah.
And that it's been rejected shows how great it is, and therefore everyone's a fool. But many, many wonderful books, great books, have been rejected and have to have a long time to find its way into public view, however limited that view might have been. Even the short stories, even Dubliners, I think, took 14 years to get published. But those are the books I like very much. I mean, I love Nightwood. I love Juno Barnes, again, for the same reasons, the profound lyricism of the chapters in the book, although maybe some of it's very dross-like. It's very, the opening 30 pages or so are just boring to death for me, but so what? Walking in the street can be boring and something illuminating happens, a bird comes across the sky or something. But those are the books I revere, and in part perhaps because I admire so much the stance that the writers took. Apropos of Juan Rulfo, when the book came out, he was recognized pretty soon, I think, as a major important writer. And I think, if I'm correct, maybe I'm glamorizing him, I might do that, but he was invited to go to a prize in Madrid or this or that. And he wasn't interested because he had had a career as a car tire salesman. I mean, you see? Yeah. And they said to him about the book, so what was he doing? He said, well, he spent 15 years thinking about the book. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure the book was living in his mind and his heart and his body and his tissue and his marrow, and he was living it for 15 years, and then one day it came out. He gave birth to it. But that's beautiful to me. I think, since I'm on this role of thinking, expressing every moment of my unfiltered thoughts, I think, isn't it better to write one beautiful, noble, great book that has some import and will have some import, not that anything's going to last forever, maybe not even Proust will last forever, nobody will last forever, nothing will last forever, but that has some dignity in its being, then write 45 fucking well-made novels that you won't remember tomorrow. I mean, we have instances of that. Well-made novels, people very acclaimed, prized novelists, money-making. I don't mean schlock novels. I mean good writers.
No, but, literary fiction.
And I can't, may I say, I love the Updike early books, the Rabbit books. I think they're terrific. I think the first novel, his first novel was terrific. His name I can't remember. Terrific book. But then after a while, I think, how many can I read and remember? And no, they don't have the efficacy. They don't have the stamina for me. They're wonderful to read, and they vanish from your mind. And there are other writers like that. But not Pedro Páramo. No, not Magic Mountain. None of those books, no.
It actually ties back to the memoir because you have your writing professor, Leonard
Ehrlich,
who had one novel that was a sensation in its time and never manages to write again.
Exactly.
Before we get to that part,
his book was called God's Angry Man. Yeah. It was a novel about John Brown, and he wrote it when he was 25. It was published when he was 25, and he was acclaimed. In New York, in the memoir, I even find some of the reviews in it. He was acclaimed. This is it. Another great American writer has emerged. Yeah, and he could not. He wrote 2 more novels.
Yeah,
I saw the manuscripts. It wasn't that he invented. I saw them, physically saw them. 2 more books without the ending chapters, without the final chapter. And he couldn't finish the last chapters. I mean, that's insane. But what happened with him is that the book had power, it had efficacy, but it went along, it drifted along, it had many reprints. When we used to go to Strand in the old days, you saw an reprint after reprint, different for God's Angry Men. But then after a while, it fades away. It doesn't have, and I read it again because of him, in memoir, it doesn't have the magic of a book like Pedro Páramo. It doesn't have. It's a beautiful, crazy, passionate book about John Brown, and the prose is, it's forceful, and a young boy like that. He was a boy when he wrote it. It's extraordinary achievement, but no, it doesn't. It still fits into the American naturalist realist realm. That's what it does.
Which, now that we've touched on the memoir, gets to my opening question in that St. John sort of way, even though we're going to keep all this stuff anyway. What brought you to the memoir? I know.
Well,
You're older.
I have said it.
Look back.
Say it again. No.
What brought you to the memoir?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've said it before. One day, I mean, I started some years ago. Because many of the people I love very much were dying or dead. People I really, a little bit older than myself, or maybe 10, 15 years older than myself. So I was sort of the younger guy. I was a younger friend. And now they're gone. And one was Roy Lichtenstein, whom you see the picture of him over my desk, whom I adored and loved, and whose work I revere still to this moment. And these older friends. The other one was Alain Resnais, the film director, the French film director, whose film, the last year at Marienbad, I find the most perfectly made film in the world. Most beautiful, most elegant, most touching, most strange. I didn't know him very well. I didn't know him for a very long time, but we hit it off very well, and we hit it off in such a good way. I felt so close to him. Was the novelist, the French novelist who I should mention them in an earlier moment about the books I reread again. I'll go back to that.
Yeah, well, this will divagate.
I don't want to lose that thread because I have to say this. Is Raymond Queneau, Queneau. He was my editor at Gallimard, and he published my first novel in French. And my first novel was translated and published by Chez Gallimard, the publishing house Gallimard. And I didn't know him very well at all. But what I did know of him and what we did have and the exchanges we had was so meaningful to me. And he died. So, and then, of course, the one who was someone I had known for a while, many years actually. It's so interesting when you have older friends who will die because younger friends can't replace them in any regard. They just can't.
That was Chris Hitchens made that comment once that you're old once you can't have old friends anymore. You can't make old friends. Something along those lines. You can build these new ones, but it's not the same.
New friendships you can't because you don't have. Well, two reasons. One, because you don't have a history together that goes on. Jerome, Sharon, and I have a history since the Bronx, since we were 16 years old. That's a little different. But the other person is Georges Remy, R-E-M-I, who is known as Hergé, who did all the Tintin books, the Tintin graphic novels. Yeah. And we were friends for quite a while until he died. In fact, when I was living in Paris, I would take the TGV to go to Brussels to see him until maybe 2 weeks before he died. Mm. And he had a profound influence on me in many ways, apart from the work which I revere and use, the characters I use in my novel, Tintin in the New World, whose permission he gave me to use. But those people gone, and I see a vacuum here. But leaving aside the fact that my mother, my father, my grandmother, I have no living relatives. I have a distant cousin from my mother's side. I have no brothers, no sisters. I might have some half brothers, but I don't know where they are. My father was very secretive.
Which is haunting early parts of the book.
I do have some half brothers somewhere if they're still alive, but I don't know where they are. I never met them. I began to feel that loss, the feeling I want to recapture them, to use Proustian ideas again, to recapture them by writing about them. I wanted to also, in a not too humble way perhaps, say that I was alive here on this planet, that I lived here, that I had something to say about what I lived. That meant a lot to me. I thought, other people do it. They write these memoirs about anything, Everyone's writing a memoir. I actually used to think memoir writing was a kind of, how can I put it, a cheap shot.
Yeah.
I always thought that. And also autobiographical novels. That's why my first novel is shunned completely. Any hint, I hoped, of autobiography. I thought that's the easy way to do it. Tom Wolfe, Look Home with Angel, all those prized autobiographical novels. And I thought, no, it's not going to be for me. So I felt the sense of mortality, the sense of loss, and the sense of wanting to bring to light people like Leonard Ehrlich, who have vanished from this planet. For all purposes in life, he's vanished. I mean, his book has vanished. He has vanished. I don't know if he has any living relatives. I don't know. He never married. I thought, how can I let that happen? I want to write about these people in my life. I want to write my family. Really think about it. For all of us. Our parents, we love or don't love. Sometimes we love them a lot, and we're going to miss them a lot. We treasure them or don't treasure them, but they will vanish as we have, and no one will ever have any clue that they lived, that they suffered, that they thought, that they slept, that they dreamt, that they had loved. Nothing. I thought, I don't want that. I don't want my grandmother, whom I just still to this moment think about. I think about her very often. Very often. Sometimes I talk to her. Yeah. I don't believe in the other life too much, except when I want to go there with my books.
I see, more charitable moments, but yeah.
But I think of her heroism. I think of people who are heroic without going to battle or fighting great struggles, revolutions. But the everyday battle of life, the everyday need for one's integrity and stamina and goodwill, which I felt my grandmother had, my mother too, although she was so disjointed and so brokenhearted when my father left. But just to keep us alive, my mother keeps all that strong. I wanted that. I wanted that in some way that I have recorded it. And that it meant something to others, I hope, not just to as a kind of a documentary.
Well, to me, what's interesting and what I found even more compelling about it, as we'll say entertaining for lack of a better word, as entertaining as the chapters themselves are with the stories and how you're telling them, the footnote elegies at the ends of the chapters where you take your mother, you take Ehrlich, you take these various people and draw out the stories of the rest of their lives because it wouldn't fit in the context of the chapter itself. But those things, adding that sense of mortality to the youthful story that you're doing, putting those in as addenda, I was just... They're amazing, the way they contrast or add weight to the chapters themselves.
Thank you very much. I had considered how to do that. I thought maybe there'd be endnotes for a while. But one of my dear friends, David Sally, the painter, said to me, Fred, no one reads endnotes. Forget it.
Putting it right at the end of the chapter instead, you flow into.
I thought I flow it into the text, and that was great. And the publisher allowed me to do that. That was wonderful. Mm-hmm. They were very good about the book. They'd let me do what I wanted. That was really, and I had a great editor. Ira Silverberg, who was a legendary editor. You know who he is? You've heard about him? Yeah. And he was my editor. And so he was remarkable. His notes were absolutely useful because in a way he could see things when you're over the overstructure of the book. Sometimes you lose the thread somewhere. But he would point out, this, you mentioned this, but you don't come back to this again. Wonderful. He was great. But the notes I wanted to say, for example, here's a character like... John Resco was in the book. I wanted him absolutely in the book. John Resco. When I was 15 and a half years old, at legal age, my mother signed the papers and I dropped out of high school, Christopher Columbus High School in the Bronx. I thought I was going to save my money, go to get a job, save money, and go to Paris to be a painter.
As one does.
Obviously, as everyone does. And I had a job in a mailroom of a Sperry & Hutchinson company. It was a green stamp company on 14th Street, between 14th and 15th on Fifth Avenue. I still remember it. And anyway, the in my building, which was my neighborhood, was a kind of interesting neighborhood. It was all Jewish, practically all Jewish except for me, my mother, and my grandmother. Oh, there was another Italian family living in the building.
Well, I said in the beginning, you say that they moved there so that you wouldn't grow up to be a truck driver or a mafia lowlife. But I wonder if you would have, appreciated either of those careers instead. But anyways,
no, my mother, thank God, my mother, she wanted to save me from and said if I went to Arthur Avenue to the Italian section, I would just maybe a civil sanitation worker. Who knows what I would become? It isn't disrespectful to the Italians. It's just that was
that's what the options were.
Those were the options. Yeah. What were you going to do? So I say all that because in the building there was this. It was a neighborhood where, and I wrote this in the memoir, where education was prized above all. Not sports. Not if you're a great basketball player in the courts and you're a kid. No. Parents would come, mothers would come on the day the report cards were issued. They knew when it was coming. They'd go to the school, wait for the kid to come out, and read the report on the steps. I remember one day Carl Barish's brother had his report card, or Carl Barish made himself, had the report card in his hand. And his mother took it out of his hand and read it. And actually took out of my hand my report card, and said, he got an A in this and you got a B plus. Why? And she slapped him. I'll never forget that. It was incredible. So I had done something wrong.
Yeah. The Gentile does better than you in class.
Well, that maybe it was the implication of it. Yeah, this poor boy goy could get an A. I mean, how can that be? But anyway, the point is that in that building there was this very wonderfully interesting and absolutely gorgeous, sexy woman, married to a man who was a painter and a teacher at the High School of Music and Art. He was actually the principal of the High School of Music and Art, and an artist. She was, I guess, we would call blue stocking. You know, she was an intellectual, reader, passionate. And she brought me to meet this man, John Resco, who, how she met him, how she knew him, I have no idea. He had been in Dannemora prison for 20 years. He killed a guy he killed a grocery store owner in a holdup when he was 17 years old. Anyway, long and short of it is, he was, after 3 reprieves, he was sent to Dannemora for life. And he began to paint and draw in Dannemora, and 20 years later he was able to get out through the help of very powerful people who loved his work and liked him. Mm-hmm. So now, how I forgot? So he's in the Bronx in this Parkchester complex of the most kind of beehive of middle classdom, and there was such a wonderful time. He and his wife treated me like basically as if I were their own son. And John was marvelous. He told me about books I didn't know about. I mean, when you're in high school, I dropped out already. I had been reading a lot, but you know, how much can you know?
16 at that point.
Yeah, I was 15 and a half. But I mean, he brought me to Kafka. I had read Rimbaud because I had figured that Rimbaud and I were sort of similar. We were both kids and we were going to change the world. That's what I thought. Yeah. But Kafka he brought me to, and so many wonderful writers and music and painting. And now he wrote a book called Reprieve. I've tried to get it republished. There was sort of a hint of interest, but nothing really too solid. Too bad. It's too bad. It's a remarkable prison narrative. Mm-hmm. Reprieve. He wrote the book, and there was a stupid film made of it called not Ocean's 11. Some dumb film was made of it, with Ben Gazzara playing John Resco and a cast of minor actors. But that's it. And now, where his paintings are, I don't know. I know he had a daughter. He had the daughter when he committed the crime. He committed the crime. He was with a woman that had a child. I think he was married to that woman. He was 17. And the daughter's, if she's alive, he had a daughter. But where and who has the paintings? His wife died maybe 8 years ago. I was in touch with her for a while. But so where the paintings are, I don't know. Where the drawings are, I don't know. Where is he? I don't know. I mean, in the sense that where is his career? Where is his art? I don't know. And it meant a lot to me to write about him. A lot. You know, I remember I'd go to him when teenage love problems. I remember one in particular. There was a girlfriend, Jerome Charon, and I shared. I mean, shared means we were both in love with her.
And she had no interest in either of you?
Well, she was interested in... No, she loved us both, but she didn't tell us that she was seeing us both.
Even better.
He writes about it in his memoirs. He always has a thing. He always calls me his rival in his memoir. I wasn't his rival. I didn't even know that he was my rival. I didn't even know about him. Anyway, she kept us, you know, in tandem, so to speak, unknown to each other.
And this is all going back to teenage years, also.
Yeah. So I remember.
Lest anybody think we're talking about these guys as adults.
No, I was then. By the time I started meeting Faye, I was almost 16, and of course she was called. She was actually called the Elizabeth Taylor of the Bronx. She was beautiful, that kind of soft voice. I still hear it. Beautiful eyes and a figure like Elizabeth Taylor. You know, buxom in a way. Not buxom. That's not the good word. But as we would say, she was built. I guess you can't say that anymore, right?
Oh, yeah.
But in the 50s, you'd say she was built. Anyway.
Let's see. Jerome, Girl Trouble.
Yeah, so I remember going to John, and I found out. She told us. She brought us together to her apartment. Her mother was frequently out. She played the piano. She was studying piano. And I just remember seeing, one day, I remember earlier than that, I saw a photograph of Jerome and a bodybuilding photograph. You had, you know, he was naked chest, making muscles. And I kept saying, who is that guy? Oh, he's my friend from Musical Art High School. And then finally, one day, she brought us together to meet each other. And actually to make the reveal, to tell us. And the great thing, I mean, it's really sort of a 50s thing, because it's so 50s. I don't think these expressions are used anymore. I think she said to us, about the two of you, I have mixed emotions. Mixed emotions was always the formula. Mm-hmm. You know, I love you, but I'm not sure if I love you. Mixed emotions. I mean, that was the standard teenage line, you know.
But Resco helped.
So I go to see John one evening. I call him up. John, I have to see you. John, I have to see you. Okay, come over. I come over all the way to Park Chester. I mean, it was a real schlep. I had to take a bus and all that crap to get there. It's complex. And I tell him everything. I pour out my heart to him. Now, this guy was in prison for 20 years who had to keep himself intact, not to get in trouble, not to do all the things that would have blemished his record so they would never let him out. I mean, the wisdom of that, all of it. And I told him the whole story. And then he looked at me and he said very quietly, Fred, what are you going to do when you have some real trouble? You know?
From the man who introduced you to Kafka. And I just showed you that things would be a lot worse and a lot less fixable.
Well, when you read the book Reprieve, you realize, as is today, in prison, you're threatened within and without. Yeah. By fellow prisoners, by the guards, by everyone. Mm-hmm. Life is a daily threat. Every day you wake up, you don't know what's going to happen to you. It was different than Dannemora, I think.
Which was regarded as pretty hardcore.
It was one of the worst prisons in the world.
Yeah.
It was called the Alcatraz of the North. Mm-hmm. Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. You can't. I mean, when he describes, and by the way, he said, now that he's dead, I can say that he said to me, there are things I couldn't put in the book. Yeah. So he was on parole. He wasn't pardoned.
Right.
He was on parole. They could have pushed him.
Yeah, if he starts talking about mistreatment by guards and everything.
They could have pulled him back in again anytime. Well, what they would do, first of all, imagine, Dannemora is near the Canadian border. It's freezing. Freezing. But imagine, do you think they'd spend money heating the fucking prison for these guys? Right. So sometimes if there was something happened that there was maybe a disturbance, who knows what that would have meant? Some kind of disturbance, they would come in, I think if I remember correctly, come with a hose and hose down the cells so you'd be there in wet and freezing. Mm-hmm. I mean, stuff like that.
It's a degree, and I don't want to reveal the very, very end of John's life because it's one of those footnote chapters in the book, but the path he chose at the very, very end basically said to me, this is a guy who understood what it was like to be a piece of meat.
Be a piece
of meat.
He
understood that prison never left him.
Yeah.
He understood that in the bottom line is you're just a piece of meat, and that's why he chose the treatment that he did at the very, very end.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Again, another thing.
But that's right. That's exactly right. Well, we'll talk about that. But the footnotes. Yeah. Well, the reason we talked about it is the footnotes because I wanted in the memoir
those things,
to read, to tell you what was going on. But then, what happened to these people?
Right.
So I in the footnote will tell you what happened to Ehrlich, what happened to my mother, what happened to John Resco, what happened to other people. Yeah. I thought that was the best way to handle it. Mm-hmm. So there's stories. They're two different stories in a way.
How different was writing this than writing fiction, given the various styles of fiction you've worked in?
Yeah.
Or is it still storytelling?
Well, it's interesting. Well, it's still storytelling because I started it. This had different avatars. This book. I started it as I started as portraits, as if the mosaic of these portraits would give me a sense of my own life. So there were little portraits. One was about Hergé, who did. Hergé, Georges Remy. One was about Susan Sontag. One was about Peter Ujar, the photographer. One was about a little bit about Paul Tech. A little cameo, so to speak. Little mosaics, which I thought would fill a whole pattern, give you a sense of the life of mine and my life with these people and their life with me. But it really wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't satisfying, and I'm not good at it. The master of those kinds of things is James Lord. James Lord is a great writer. I mean, when he writes these portraits of people, they come alive, and they're really wonderful and vibrant and fascinating. I wasn't good at it. And it wasn't true to what I was doing, what I wanted. It wasn't true to the feeling that I wanted to leave some impress of myself on the book. I wasn't doing that.
There's too much of the
it was
other
outside.
person.
It was the other person. Then I started another version of this, and my dear friend, my former student and writer I admire, I wish you would know about her work. She's remarkable. It's Iris Smiles, Smyles. You should do something with her, Gil, because she's great.
I do a terrible job of interviewing people who aren't white and male. So yes, more female guest suggestions.
She's
really
she's
good.
Remarkable.
So,
she has 2 books. One is called Iris Has Free Time, which is wonderful. I mean, believe me, I have to say this, insist on this. I do not promote anybody or anyone's work if I don't really love it or believe it. I think it's worthless and useless. And I do not feel animosity to writers I hate personally whose work I like. I mean, if I love the work, I love the work. I don't let my feeling about them personally injure my feelings about or my respect for the work. So if I say that she's a remarkable writer, believe me, I mean it. And she is. There are parts near the end which I think let me put it another way. As a first novel, it's so much better than Fitzgerald's first novel, which is just so mawkish and ridiculous. It's witty and ironic and touching. The other book is called Dating Tips for the Unemployed. It's remarkable, witty, and kind of interconnecting essays. Anyway, she read the book. She read the manuscript. And she said to me, "What are you doing? What is this book? What? I can't believe you're writing this." And she was very strong with me, very upsetting. It still upsets me to this moment. She said, "It actually makes me ill." I said, "It makes you ill?" I was so upset about that. She said, "Listen, you're just writing on." And then I went to the park yesterday, and I met this guy, John Resco, and he wrote. I just, like people tell things that happen, but there was no guts to it.
Yeah.
So when you say it's like writing fiction, in a way, it's like writing fiction because there is in the memoir. It's scenes, characters, dialogue, all of it. It is like that, except that it's really true. I mean, in a way, as anyone can know, it's true. And apropos of the truth of it, Anne Stringfield, who used to be the fact checker at the New Yorker, read the book. I cannot tell you, Gil, I've never had this happen by anyone in my life or any other editor in my life. Well, most editors don't do this, especially now. She was punctilious. She found things. I would say something like, then John Resco and I took the 3rd Avenue L, and we got off at such and such street and walked to the gallery on 50 such. And she said, no, the gallery's not on that street. It's 1954. Yeah.
And the stop was actually a block earlier.
Yeah, a block. Yeah. She found everything. She's amazing. I made the mistake. I thought my grandmother, my mother, and my father were all buried in Woodlawn Cemetery. And I wrote it. I had written that they were in Woodlawn Cemetery. And no, it wasn't true. And how she found it, I don't know. St. Raymond's Cemetery.
Yeah.
And I think that what happened to me is that I'd gone to Woodlawn Cemetery because I wanted to see Melville's grave.
Yeah.
So I think in some way, I hoped the idea that that's where they were. And so where I would go, where Melville went.
Yeah.
No, it's not true. I actually also called them to see. Maybe she was wrong. No, they had no record of my mother or my grandmother being there. No. I was very disappointed. And now I understand, even up there in the Bronx, the rent is high. So It's not going to be, if I want to go up there, it's not going to be so easy.
Yeah, for the long term like that.
Yeah.
Although it actually is a question Jerome Charon sent, because I wrote him yesterday to tell him we were getting together. Why is Fred so haunted about going back to the Bronx?
Oh, that's so interesting a question, really. It is an interesting question to me anyway, because Jerry likes it.
Yeah.
Jerry goes back. Jerry likes it. He goes back. I know he goes to Arthur Avenue. He goes to his old haunts.
And many of his books.
And many of his books take place in the Bronx. Yeah, which I'm not sure if I said this to him once. I may have said it to him. I said to him, you escaped the Bronx by writing about it. I escaped the Bronx by never going back.
Yeah.
I escaped the Bronx by going to Paris. Well, he did too, eventually. But I escaped it because I feel I don't know if he told you we did a little film together.
Yeah, Lenore had sent me a link to it.
Yeah, it's called The Two Boys from the Bronx. Yeah. since people at BBC asked me if I would do this thing about going to the Bronx, and I didn't want to do it alone. I was stupid. I probably should have done it alone, Jerry. I should have done it alone, but now it's too late. Jerry, too late. But I'm so happy you're in it because it made us really close to each other. And that it was wonderful to be with you. But anyway, we both went back, and he went to his neighborhood, showed us the building he lived in. I did the same. All the stuff we did went to all our respective important places. He thrived in that. I could see it. As we were talking, he was talking about it, and he was thriving. I came out of that. We filmed maybe 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. We went to the Bronx, the Paradise Movie House, where we would go as kids, not knowing each other, of course. All the places we would go and do. When I came out of that after those 3 or 4 days, I was sick for a week. I mean, I don't mean that, I wasn't feeling. I was sick. I had to go to bed. I was ill for a week from it. There's something about it that made me so sad. It was a sadness. He's not sad. He's nostalgic. He's celebratory in a way. He makes a myth of the Bronx. That's his Faulkner country, so to speak. He's not sad. I feel the sadness of my own childhood there, of my family.
Say, your family situation was a lot different than Jerome's, and it would seem that would
that's also
color
part of
everything.
Yeah, he had a mother and father and brothers, and there was a kind of nuclear family, so to speak, whatever mishigas they may have had. But no, mine was. When you're living it, you don't really quite understand, only in retrospect, how poor we were, how really poor we were. I mean, it's hard to imagine it, really. How poor we were. I mean, not to have enough blankets in the winter, put coats over ourselves, and not to have food. I mean, where is this? Where was I living? In the Bronx. And not having the threat of eviction all the time. My mother frightened that they were coming, the city marshal would come and throw us out. And we had eviction notices. Not having food. I mean, once in a while we had no money for food. We'd have to go to my aunt's house, my mother's sister's house to be fed. So it was hurtful. Mm-hmm. I don't think Jerry was hurt by the Bronx. I wasn't hurt by John Resco. I wasn't hurt by the Columbus High School. I wasn't hurt by the teachers I had. They were wonderful to me. All those people were wonderful and nourishing, like probably no other today possible. No other way could you be that nourishing today. Those poor teachers are so harassed and so driven to nothingness. But teaching was an honorable profession in the 50s, and people with high school teachers were considered important. So I think it's the sadness of it. It's the sadness of it. It's the loneliness of it. He wasn't lonely, Jerry. Yeah. He might have had too many people around him, like his brothers. I was alone. My grandmother didn't speak English really, and so it was hard to talk with her. Even if I tried to speak in Sicilian, it wasn't really great. And she was a Sicilian, which means she didn't talk very much about herself or tell you things about herself. So I'm haunted. I'm haunted by it. I am. I hope I don't get sick now. By the way, I see you have to.
Don't worry. We can just go. If I get a ticket, I get a ticket. This is part of the price. No, don't worry. This is the price of doing the show. I prefer the conversation means everything to me. The question I have based on that, my mother was born in 1940 in London, so she grew up under rationing post-war. Wow. My father was a refugee out of Romania and then Palestine and Israel. So I've seen the long-term effects of being, growing up with rationing or poverty, et cetera. Did you externally, were you hoarding? Did you do things that were basically, here's how I'm going to protect myself against ending up like I was as a kid? Or, were there aspects of your life? How did that poverty, affect you beyond the, inability to go back to the Bronx? Do you see aspects of yourself that you're like, wow, if I was raised a little more secure, I wouldn't have been. I mean, I'm the same way with books, so I'm convinced that book hoarding is a separate category entirely.
Yeah, but, books are security.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it's security. I remember the last time I saw Susan Sontag, we were going to dinner maybe a year or so before she died. I went to her place. We were so close in some ways, although we didn't see each other very often. It was better that we didn't. It kept us closer. But I remember in her apartment, she had these beautiful books, stacks of bookcases. And as we were talking, wandering through the house, she would touch the books, put her hand over the books, caress them as we were talking. Mm-hmm. And I understood that feeling. They're comfort. They're your home.
Yeah.
They're your security. They're your fortress. They're everything. But I don't know if the question, you're asking me is what I'm going to ask you. What you're answering is this. I think there are people who grow in poverty or become so terrified of being poor, they do everything they can not to be poor.
Yeah.
They actually become successful lawyers or doctors or entrepreneurs or whatever they do to be sure that they have enough cash, so to speak, between them and the fall. Mm-hmm.
You clearly did not pursue that path by going into writing.
No, and I actually think to myself, people usually do the opposite of what they grew up in. If they come up from poverty, they want something else. They want another kind of... No, I clung and stupidly cling to, and now, maybe I hope unhappily so, the idea that you don't need very much to live, mm-hmm. but you need enough to be calm enough to do your work. And secure enough to do your work. I mean, there's no one knocking at the door to throw you out.
Yeah.
That's what you have not to have. Although now it's a threat. It's a threat to any one of us, like myself, on a pension from the university. It's a threat because even with rent control, in my case, the rent control goes up 9.5% a year. 9.5% a year. And so I can't even tell you how I dread the idea that one day it'll be more than my pension, and it's not too far away. But having said that, I thought, I'll go back to what it was. I thought, when I was very young, I thought, well, I didn't think about it. I thought, I'm an artist. Artists don't think about it. We'll find a way. I don't know. Yeah. Henry Miller was the way, Henry Miller. You go someplace.
I'm the happiest man alive.
Yeah, and so, happy. I have nothing. I'm poor. Henry Miller was the way, which is say, you don't have anything, but you do the work, and you'll find some way. You'll find it. Maybe a guy will lend you $5 or something like that. You're scrounging. Whatever you have to do. Get a shitty job. But of course, what I thought was, and my generation, I should put it this way, the people I knew at City College and the rest of us, we thought that we would get jobs like merchant seamen, get papers, and ship out for 3 or 4 months and have enough money to write. It was always a way to make enough money to have enough time, to buy time.
Yeah.
I mean, so the Beat Generation guys, some of them became parks, national parks guardians, things like that. They have one of those people who watch for fire watches, right? And they'd be up there with canned food, and they'd be writing, and then wouldn't. So I thought, I'll find a way. Then I remember a certain moment when I got really a point where I thought, maybe I won't find a way. What am I going to do? How am I going to take care of myself? I went back to graduate school, thinking I'll teach. And at the very end of it, when I finished my orals, I had to prepare for my dissertation, and I thought, I'd been writing for Vogue. I'm writing film reviews for Vogue. I wasn't on staff, but I was freelancing, and Vogue took my reviews. They liked me. I was writing for the New York Times, art reviews. I was doing some book reviews, but I was publishing. And I thought, well, you know what? Why do I have to bother now with finishing the dissertation? Why do I have to another year or 2 years of this like that? And I remember going to people who I'd been reviewing with, the A-list reviewers for Film World, John Simon, all those other people from and I asked them, "What do you do? How are you making out?" And almost every one of them said, "I have a little something." I didn't understand what that. They had a trust fund,
right.
So, enough to keep you covered, so your overhead was taken care of, and that's always for a freelancer. The overhead is the thing.
So you don't have to rely on.
Yeah, because if you can't get that check that you've been waiting for, you can't pay your rent. So and I thought, gee, God damn it, I have no little something. And I went to Susan. I went to Sontag, who always seemed to have good advice to me. I said, Susan, what should I do? What should I do? Should I just finish this degree? And she said, oh, come on, Fred. Of course you got to finish it because there are 3 reasons for teaching. Yeah, June, July, and August.
So my brother says, he's a high school teacher, but same thing. Yeah. You get those months.
Yeah.
Well, what did teaching teach you? I mean, you created a creative writing program.
I didn't find it, and I wasn't the founder, but I was instrumental in it, and I ran it for a very long time. It was a graduate creative writing program. We only had an MA at the time, and it was before Columbia, NYU, before Hunter, before any other graduate program in creative writing in the city. It was the first one in the city. And at first, I was very opposed to it. Not opposed to having it, opposed to being part of it.
Okay.
Because I had gotten my doctorate in American literature, and I wanted to teach literature. I didn't want to teach writing. And I didn't know if it could be done. I didn't know what the point of it was anyway, in fact.
That's always the question.
But what's good is it? What's going to come of it? And then when my Mao novel came out, they said to me, "We'd like you to direct it." So the long and short of it is, I did. What I found was, for many years, it excited me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that excited me was to see that there were young people, because it was City College, and the prices were not astronomical. Now it's like $50,000, $60,000 a year at Columbia. Are you out of your mind? Are you fucking out of your mind?
Yeah.
Go to dental school, get a trade, and then write.
Yeah.
So they were paying nothing to get, and teaching and studying with the best people. When I tell you, I don't mean these fakeries where someone comes in for a talk for 2 days and they have the list.
The faculty.
Donald Bartholomew taught there for years. Mm-hmm. Joe Heller of Catch-22 taught there for 2 or 3 years. John Hawkes taught there for a year. We had incredible, resonant, not resident, but they resonated. They were all terrific with the students, terrific and helpful. Bartholomew went out of his way to help some students get published. It was extraordinary. I'm only naming a few. Sontag came for a year. I mean, I can go through the roster and you'll see what I'm saying. Yeah. So I felt this is the messianic part of me. It was also the part of me that went to City College as an undergraduate and wanted to pay back. I still feel that way.
Do you wish that program existed when you were a student there?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really, no, because I was an English major, so we read books I never would have read. It's always what it means. And then I had this little minor in creative writing with Leonard Ehrlich. And I had these quiet little workshops of maybe 8 people. A gentleman's workshop,
yes. Although even out of that, you come up with some amazing anecdotes.
Yeah.
Which, again, we don't want to give any spoilers because it's such an entertaining book.
Love stuff. Yeah. But no, the point I'm making about why I like what about teaching, I felt that in my life, the difference between falling and just at least walking was that there were people there to help me at significant moments. John Resco was one. Ehrlich was another. There were others who had carried me along the way. I don't know what I would have done without them. I don't know what I would have done. It's very hard to be alone and try to make your way in the world. It's very hard, even if you have goodwill and some power to do it, emotional power anyway. So I'd find teaching, first of all, even in creative writing classes, you talk about books. So it was always this thrill about literature and exposing people to new books that they hadn't heard, but also to find students who really needed help and otherwise wouldn't have had it. And so I made efforts to help. Mm-hmm. And some of them are very successful. One won the Pulitzer Prize, Oscar Uelos. Not that the prize matters in that again, but he got something from it,
Yeah, did you have any recollection of like the first student of yours who went on to achieve something great that you had I helped her. I was, the professor or,
Well, there are a few. I mean, but some of them not very, very famous.
Yeah.
Like Aurelie Sheehan, who's now at the University of Arizona at Tucson. She's a marvelous writer. She's not renowned, but boy, she's really good. She's really, 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 really good. Better than 999% of the crap writers around today who are famous. I can promise you that. Yeah, well, part of it's circumstantial. You're out in Arizona, you're not in New York, you're not going to the cocktail parties, there's your shit.
There is a degree of pitches that I get for writers to record with. I'm like, I don't need the 30-year-old who college, MFA, first novel about college and MFA. Sure. That's,
Sure.
Well, people who've had some experience or, have done something off the beeten path when it comes to how they
Well, to go back to this again, I mean, what I say is, and I make public announcement of it. So when you look at the book jacket, it'll say something like, so-and-so's debut novel got her or his MFA, got her, his or him MFA from so. I don't give a fuck where you got your MFA from. Right. That doesn't tell me you're a good writer. I know they've selected you for some process so that you can get the degree there, but that doesn't tell me. And also, so why don't you tell me where you've lived, what you've done, where you've traveled? What have you done? Where's your experiential level? Yeah. Nothing. So when I go back to City College, most of the kids were not, they came at night, they worked in the day, they had jobs. Mm-hmm. Some were mothers with children. I mean, taking care of things. Oscar Uellos came from Spanish Harlem. I mean, he was the first person to ever go to college. I mean, that's who you help.
Yeah.
That's who you want to help. So I felt and I wanted to make it an atmosphere that was congenial and exciting, as much as we could afford in City College. It wasn't grand. We didn't have cocktail parties for the students, but whatever I could do, I tried very hard to do. So I guess that's what I'm saying about that.
Did it teach you anything about writing? Having to articulate as a teacher?
Would it teach me anything about writing?
Did you have to crystallize things you knew internally but didn't know you knew, I guess, when you had to begin teaching? I think
probably one of the things of it that came out after reading so much work was an insistence on synthesis.
Yeah.
And an insistence that you don't have to tell a backstory in any regard. I mean, that's a small detail of things. But, I guess, what did I learn? I don't know.
It goes back a long time. I just wasn't sure if there was anything stepping in front of a class for the first time and realizing you're the guy who has to kind of
bring
guide
it together.
them, where you don't necessarily know that you have that skill.
No, I'll tell you what I think. This is not about the writing itself. Yeah. It goes back to what I said earlier. I think what I feel and still feel to this day is this. In creative writing classes, the greatest benefit or the greatest thing you can do for a young writer is to be encouraging. And that any other idea that you should discourage a writer or humiliate a writer or tell them how work is crap so they can grow from that is bullshit. It's sadism. It's not pedagogy.
Yeah.
You encourage the things that work well within the writer's system. If they can't do dialogue, then don't do dialogue. Now that's what I've learned to do. I've learned to talk about that. Mm-hmm. Build your strengths and live with your strengths. Mm-hmm. That's it. You can make a whole book of your strengths.
Yeah. Which leads me to the self-revealing question, because I consider myself a failed writer in so many respects. And it's something that comes up in two different ways in your book.
Tell me something. Are you dead yet? I haven't noticed.
I know. It was Michael Carroll told me the same thing. It's like, Gil, I'm 54 and this is my second book. Trust me, you've got time. Yeah. I know. But I want to... Well, the first quote is going to be about your painting. The second one is about writing. But how you ended up getting over this, which is something I've never gotten over except in brief experiences. Years later, I realized what a fool I was to surrender because of an idea of perfection. And later, my drive to perfection only led to nullity. In that case, it was writing a thesis, not working on your fiction. But how did you get over the need to be perfect in work? When did you realize that, these things take time. They take drafts. This isn't... For me, it was, I'm not Pynchon / Philip Roth out of the box, therefore I'm no good. And I've managed to let that stymie me for almost 3 decades, which is pretty fucking impressive in its way.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I found other things to occupy my time, like this, to keep me from, addressing the gaping hole in the middle of my life. Yeah. But anyway, about yours. That sense that you mentioned painting first being the thing that you abandoned.
When I dropped out of high school, as I said earlier, I went to our students' league, take classes, and I was not good at it. I didn't know how to do it. I wanted to do life drawing, and I wanted to make the figure look like the figure that I was looking at. And of course, I didn't know how to do that. I had no skill. And I was discouraged. I was hurt. The teacher humiliated me. The art teacher humiliated me and said literally, "What are those things on her feet?" I said, "There's nothing on it." "Oh, I thought she was wearing galoshes," meaning that they were so exaggerated. And I was hurt. What? That's what I mean before when I said encouragement.
Yeah.
you don't have to humiliate people to make them feel well. Some theory is humiliate them, and then if they can survive that, they'll be strong enough to deal with the humiliations later on in the world as a writer or a painter.
That's just transference. That's just people trying to make up for their own pain.
And also sadism.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's power and sadism. So I remember thinking, well, I can't be a painter. I can't. No, I didn't have anyone to say to me, don't be a jerk. Just do it. Keep doing it. Just keep doing it. You love it so much. Just keep doing it. And whatever it is, it'll be your work. That's it. And maybe those things that look like galoshes could become an identifying trademark of your work. You know,
the Bigfoot style is it's a comic book thing, but
it could be.
It works.
So I guess the line would be from Shakespeare: turn disadvantage into commodity. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, I didn't know that, and I think that the perfection thing haunted me forever. Maybe Ehrlich's example, because Ehrlich had to be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, his novel was so praised. The first novel was so praised. I'm sure he felt, well, I got to do something as good, if not better. That's a disaster. That's death. Yeah. So I think I carried it all the way through undergraduate school, writing my papers, and in graduate school at Syracuse, writing my papers. And I couldn't finish. I couldn't finish a paper because I would work on it forever, take incompletes to work on it again. I mean, it was stupid and ridiculous feeling of things. I don't know when exactly this thing began to change. Probably changed with the Mao book when I just did what I wanted to do. This kind of crazy collage, pastiche novel. I felt secure in doing it. I did what I wanted. And I think there also happened after that, it was very praised. It got very good accolades, people I respect very much. And I think I might have also felt at that point, now I was sort of trapped. I remember saying it. Am I going to be cursed by Ehrlich? Now I've won one novel, will I ever do another novel?
And there was a 17-year gap?
Yeah, 16 years between. But as I said, I think earlier to you, maybe not, I never spoke to you about it. But there was other writing.
Yeah.
I was writing lots of other things. I was writing book reviews, film reviews. I wrote a film, all that stuff. No, I didn't write the film review. Yeah, I did write a film review with Andrei Zulawski, Possession. I lived in Paris. But I didn't finish a novel. You know, someone once said to me when I went back to graduate school at NYU, I was doing the same trick. I was trying to not finishing the papers, trying to get incompletes. Disaster. And then one guy, whose name I don't remember, one professor turned around and said to me, look, Mr. Totten, you don't have to be perfect. Just get your work in on time. I'll never forget that. Get your work in on time.
Deadlines help.
Yeah. But I had deadlines. Yeah. I had deadlines, and I would get incompletes. I was going to do again what I did in Syracuse, get these incompletes, never finish the work, and then be thrown out again. That's what happened in Syracuse.
Because I've gone through some of the same circumstance, is that actually a psychological device to get the approbation or anger of a father you didn't have around? Mm-hmm. Because I spent years doing that to myself, pushing things off with other male authority figures so that I could be punished in some way because
or be noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, because
not necessarily punished, but at least
some sort of.
You wouldn't be run-of-the-mill person who did the work,
right?
You're a problem kid, so to speak, even at 50.
Yeah, it took me decades to get past that too. Yeah. Again, not understanding that that's what I was doing to myself. Yeah. But yeah, I'd wondered, reading the book, whether that was the absence of your old man was part of the dynamic and attention of pushing those things to the limit so that
and trying to find father figures to take over for me and help me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's very powerful. But if I had tried to figure that out through analysis, which I was in for 6 years, I still wouldn't be writing.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to figure out why that happened would never bring me anywhere.
See, that's why I need a podcast instead. So.
You know that Leonard Ehrlich was an analysis.
Yeah.
For years. He had enough. He had an independent income somehow. I didn't know how much he had, but he had enough. Teaching he just did because he liked it and he wanted to be part of the world, in the world. But he was an analysis for years. And one day he told me his analyst said to him, after having not spoken to him for years, said to him, why don't you try dancing so you can loosen up a little? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could die on the couch 20 years later, still not figuring out, not doing anything. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I should say this, but you know, I was
just us. No one's listening.
I've been in a 12-step program. Last April 7th was my 35th anniversary of sobriety, 35 years. I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy. It means a lot to me. I remember my first year, my home group was marvelous people. All African Americans. I was the only white person in that group within the group. I mean, my sponsor was a African American from South Carolina, North Carolina. I forget which one it was. Gentlest, wonderful man. And I who could speak in classrooms, who could talk, and students out there. I could not barely raise my hand at any meeting and say anything. I was so frightened. And so I would go to meetings and stay silent. I talked to my sponsor. We talk about things like that, but I never talked at the meeting. And one day, Tony turned to me and he said, after the meeting was over, in his beautiful Southern accent that my father had too, he said, "Fred, when are you going to let your friends know who you are?" It's just this moment that was more poignant than anything that happened in an hour. Tell your friends who you are. Yeah. And they, as you know, in the program, they talk about we are not perfect. We strive for progress, not perfection. All that meant more to me than anything. And I began to sort of, I think, relax. The idea of surrendering is the thing. The idea of surrendering and thinking that, you don't have to be perfect to justify your life. You just do the work with ease. I've said this before, but the Gauguin line, the painter Gauguin, Paul Gauguin line that I should put it above my desk here. When you begin to make a drawing, hold the pencil loose. I should really put that over this thing here, because it's really what it is. All other distractions, where you are, what's going to happen to the work, all that doesn't matter. Live in the dream of the work and rest easy, because something will come. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you've done it, and you can always fix it. This is a terrible sickness we have about, all of us have, I think, about having to, and especially if you become famous, then you're sort of under scrutiny, and everyone's going to sort of, I'm not speaking for myself, I mean painter friends of mine, you're as good as your last show, and then you have another show, and they don't like the show, suddenly your whole career collapses. I mean, all the cruelty of that, without allowing for process, without allowing for maturation. The idea that an artist grows or changes and adapts to the things and conditions of thought and idea and feeling. I think that, all those things impinge on us and make us nutty and make us frightened and make us fearful about what we're going to create. I think I've tried to say this to my students many, many times, fundamentally, do the work you love because you love it. Do what you can do with good conscience and with an eye toward making it a work that you believe in and can stand by because you love what you've done and believe what you've done. And the rest you can't consider. You'll kill yourself emotionally. You'll kill yourself. So that's. I think I'm also, another thing about this, Gil, is I have a natural tendency to a laziness.
Yeah.
But I mean lazy. I mean in the sense that I could spend hours reading. I could spend hours working. I can clean my house. Although you may notice it hasn't been. These boxes that you see here are going to Ohio State University for my archives. Everything is a mess. But my ideal condition is stasis. I like just staying at rest I no longer want to
Seven Deadly Sins. Sloth is my all-time fave. That's Ed and Acedia Ego. That's my line.
The Bronx Oblomov. I want to read. I treasure seeing friends occasionally, not too much. I like going to have lunch, breakfast, and dinner at the Cafe Mogador down the road here. Yeah. If I have time, I don't know if you have any time to do it today.
I was glad I saw you mention it once because I've actually been with a friend of mine. But yeah, I'd love to after we finish up.
I'll get something to eat. Yeah. I have to be up the gallery about 2:00. Mm-hmm. I said this to someone, I don't know where it was the other day. I said, look, when you get to the grave, people are going to say, well, he only wrote 55. He only wrote 5 books, not 55. What does it matter? What does any of it matter? It's only the living of the moment matter. Living the moment. And that's why I think Pedro Páramo is that's why I think Juan Rulfo is so important to me. I mean, the idea that you can do a beautiful book and then you live your life. Your identity is not that you're not identified. Your soul is not identified as writer identity. Mm-hmm. You're a person who lives, and no one's going to measure that except yourself. So I feel that the drive. I mean, there's kind of graphomaniac novelists. Well, they do it because that's what they do. They like it. It doesn't mean that they're happier. Yeah. I mean, you wrote 70 books. You're happy. I only wrote 10. I mean, what does that mean? Okay, I guess I'm being very ridiculous in saying this, but I guess I know it's so ridiculous because what does the word mean? But I think only happiness is the measure. Mm-hmm. The rest of it's just nothing. Nothing. I guess part of what being happy means also is that you don't leave behind the feeling that you've dirtied life. That you left some stains on it, willingly, that maybe unwittingly you have, because we all will.
Another part of the 12-step process, the making amends.
No, making amends is part of it. Yeah, making amends, making sure that you tell the people you've injured or think you've injured or feel injured what you feel about what you've done, and be open to it and be honest about it. Honesty is the key. Honesty, and even that honesty has to also go to the dimension of not wanting to be perfect. To be honest with yourself and say, I'm not perfect, I will never be perfect, nothing I write will be perfect. And honestly, I may not be the greatest writer in the world, but I love writing.
I would say it's a great note for us to end on. I still want to talk to you about painting, but that's going to be what we talk about next time.
Oh, I hope it's the next time, Jill.
I want to. The other question, is there a volume 2?
I'm working on it now.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if those years are too many people still alive that you don't feel the same compulsion.
No, there is another volume. Yeah. I'm writing another second book to this, which takes me from the point of where I got a job in the welfare department at the 1964 in Harlem, and so I before I went back to graduate school, and I was married to this wonderful, intelligent, extraordinary woman. And so I take it from those years, which then suddenly things just began to change, really sail. And all kinds of things happened. My travels to South America, my writing for Vogue, lots of meeting extraordinary.
That's what I sort of wondered. The writing career, it seems like it ends just on the cusp of you beginning the writing career that you're going to undertake. Yeah. So I'm dying to read that too. So,
but I, just to say, I feel... When I was talking about dying before and getting maudlin about it, it's because I feel now, strangely, I'm beginning my life. Mm-hmm. I'm not exaggerating. I feel I'm beginning my life. I'm just now beginning. I'm beginning now to learn how to live and to work and to enjoy. And I have I have a book of short stories that it's all ready. Oh, it's at the print. It's at the Xerox, the copy guy, so I can give it to a publisher that's interested in my work. I have a complete book of short stories I want to publish. I have a novel that's here on my desk that just have to go one more edit. I have more work than I've had 25, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I feel blessed because I know I've had friends who are writers who are my age who got awards, MacArthur's. They vanished. Now, either they've been rejected to death and they don't want to continue, or they just gave up. I feel, really, Gil, I feel I'm beginning. And I think Jerry, my friend Jerome Sharon, he and I are hilarious together. I mean, he keeps doing a book a year at least.
Yeah. When we finished...
And they're huge books and fantastic books.
That's the thing. We finished talking the Teddy Roosevelt thing. They started telling me about this J.D. Salinger novel he's doing. I'm like, holy crap, I want that out now. I need to read this book, and we need to talk more.
And now the book I just got now, the book about this thing about the Berlin. Do you see that book?
No, I haven't.
I'll show it to you. You can't believe it. It's a huge book. I started reading it the other night. I thought, my God, how does he do it? How does he do it? The concentration. Yeah. His mind, obviously, is better than just okay. It's extraordinary because the prose is so firm and so extraordinarily touching and vivid. And this is the newest. I just got it in the mail about 8 days ago. Yeah, another incredible book.
Look at you guys, make me feel like more of a failure as a writer every day. This is fantastic. I promise I'll send a couple of the stories that I've written. You can tell me I should just avoid writing again. So, but I'm a kid. Don't worry, Frederick.
No. By the way, just the evidence that you're wrong is this.
I like to use Norman MacLean. I figure I have another 30 years before River Runs Through It age. So, but sorry, go on.
Do you know the novel? You know what John Steinbeck's first novel is called?
No.
You never heard about it? You don't think it was Grapes of Wrath, do you? No. Or In Dubious Battle? No. It's called Cup of Gold. It is probably the worst novel you've ever read. And what is so great to read it for? One of the reasons is to show you that you can't tell.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I mean by maturation. If you keep at it and you grow in some way, that doesn't mean it's always going to work. But then if you don't, what's your option? Nothing happens. So he actually came from a crummiest writing, and I'm telling you, it's crummy. And then he did this In Dubious Battle, which is magnificent. Do you know his novel In Dubious Battle? I think that's better than Grapes of Wrath in some way. Well, tighter. But I mean, whether you like Steinbeck or no, you cannot dismiss him as a fine writer. You may not like the work; it may not be interesting to you, but he came from this crummy writing to a superb writer. So.
He didn't have an MFA program. So.
Imagine the quality. Imagine how much better a writer Melville would have been, or Proust would have been. And Proust would have taken a workshop in memoir writing. It would have been perfect for him.
Yeah, it would have been much more concise. He wouldn't have needed 3,000 pages.
Come on, Marcel. Get rid of these long sentences. And no one wants to read long sentences.
We need more of you in this.
Yeah. What do you feel about the characters? I mean, I make fun of these programs. I guess they can't hurt you, except your pocketbook.
Yeah.
I mean, it really can't hurt you. I mean, you go to these programs, at least you meet some other people, you hang out, you drink, you make love, you have fun, maybe. And then you're in debt. That's the only problem I find. It's a prolonged adolescence in a certain sense.
Yeah.
And if you can afford it, why not? You meet people, you go to a meeting, you go to AWP, whatever it's called, you hang out, you feel like you're a writer. Doesn't hurt. Yeah.
See, again, I have this as my fake version of doing it instead. I'm around writers, so that excuses me.
I won't tell you who he is, but years ago I met a writer, experimental writer, and I said something to him. He said, "I can afford to do this. I sell real estate."
There you go.
Right.
I'm a lobbyist of the pharma industry. I guess I should
he's
just
selling real estate so he can write these wacky books.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's justice in that, Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
I'm so happy, Gil, to meet you. I'm very happy to meet you.
And that was Frederick Totten. His new book is My Young Life, a memoir, and it is a marvelous piece of memoir. It's from Simon & Schuster, came out March 2019. Check it out. And also get to his website and look for his fiction and his art writing. The website is frederictutton.com, and it's a little tricky. FrederickTutten.com. So there's no K on Frederick, and Tuten has a grand total of 2 T's in it, Tutten. Now, I enjoyed The Green Hour, which we talk about in this episode. I plan on getting back to Tintin and the New World once I've finally read The Magic Mountain. But yeah, give Frederick's work a shot. Check out the art writing and criticism. Check out My Young Life. Check out his whole body of work. Frederick's also on Instagram as Frederick Totten, all one word, no spaces, spelled the same as the website. You should check out some of his artwork there, along with a bazillion pictures of him and his pals at Cafe Mogador. We did not take a picture of ourselves there, which I'm now bummed about. But again, we'll have another chance, I hope. And after we wrapped, I asked Frederick, so, who you been reading? And if you want to hear his answer to that and get some extra conversation, you'll need to become a supporter of the Virtual Memories Show so you can get access to our quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet. The first quarter 2019 episode just went live, and it features book recommendations and extra conversation with Jerome Charin, Peter Cooper, Edmund White, Eva Hagberg-Fisher, Mort Gerberg, James Osland, Joe Chardello, James Sturm, Martin Haglund, Bram Presser, and Nathan Englander. You can support the Virtual Memories Show via patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod. I've got all sorts of goals and goodies in place for patrons, including that podcast, a patron-only blog, handwritten show notes for every episode, my secret project, which I made a little progress on Sunday, and more. So go to patreon.com/VMSpod and support the art of fine conversation. Now, I recorded this one at Frederick's home in the East Village, and it was a goddamn nightmare getting into town because of traffic, construction, Saturday morning, blah, blah, blah. I wound up having to park on the street, and we went on so long I got ticketed. So in total, this episode was about $95 for tolls and parking. I also paid for our brunch at Cafe Mogador, but that was all in the interest of joy and fun. So if you want to help defray some of the costs of the Virtual Memories Show, like web hosting, travel, equipment, coffee, parking tickets, or just toss me some money because you think the show is worth it, then visit patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod and make a one-time or recurring donation. Special thanks go out to Nick Bartosik, Michael Hacker, Michael Janizik, Fred Kish, Jonathan Kranz, Jack Lescamella, Teresa Lewis, Stephen Nadler, Jim Ottaviani, Payne Prophet, Dmitry Samarov, Stephen Solomon, Craig P. Steffen, Greg Tanner, Ford Thomas, and Garrett Zecker for going over and above in their support of the Virtual Memories Show. We have the full list of show supporters at chimeraobscura.com/VM. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. Check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018 and listen to his music at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. And that's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with Ursi Soteropoulos, author of What's Left of the Night. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSpod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, tell people on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. It all goes to helping us build a bigger audience. Now, you've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.